Shalom, everyone. Good Sabbath day to you. This is Bill Bullock, and I'm coming to you live once again from the Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, USA. Welcome to the second installment of our 5785 series, which is Walking in the Light, discovering the hidden wisdom encoded within Torah's timeless stories. So we started our series, our quest last week, and I hope you were with us for that. If not, go back and you could read and listen to the story on Genesis on Bereshit. You could also, if you want to understand the theme that we're going to use this year for our studies of the Torah, you can go back to the other video that I did that day that's on YouTube or on Facebook, perhaps other social media, and you can find that is the introduction to Torah studies in 5785. So here we are today, and the Parsha, the subdivision of the Torah, we're going to be reading and looking for secret wisdom from this mysteries of the kingdom is Genesis 6:9 through 11:32. So welcome to Parsha called Noach. It's about a man that everybody in the world knows. The main character, in the human form at least, of these stories, we're going to read three basic stories in this series of verses. And this parsha contains this man's story, Noah, as he's known in the Western world, Noach, as he's known in his native language of Hebrew. So our theme of discovering the secret wisdom encoded in timeless stories is going to be applied this week to a very special persona, and to his family, and to his bloodline, and to the effect and the impact his life had upon this earth, the universe, and the covenant between the creator of the universe and mankind. So welcome. Let's get in. I want to reintroduce you, though, to not just to Noach, who is the human character, but I wanted to introduce you to the divine character, the ultimate leading man, the creator of the universe. We learned so much about him last week. He's not just some force in the universe. He's not some force field. He's not some unknowable being out there, some other race or planet. He's not an interplanetary traveler. He is the creator of the universe. He is a knowable and a lovable persona. He's not an abstract concept. He's not comprehensible only by philosophers and theologians. Every human being is programmed to be able to know him, to be able to love him, to be able to revere and respect him, and to be able to serve him as he intended. So we're introducing the Creator to you again first, quickly, we're using the medium that he's chosen to use. I mean, if you want to sum up the whole purpose of Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and then all the ones that follow after that and build upon the Torah. If you want to sum up, it is, do you want to know your Creator? And do you want to know why you're here and what he's put you on earth to do? So the medium that he's using, both in Torah and throughout the teachings of Yeshua, when he taught parables, are teaching how to know the Creator and understand his knowable and lovable persona through tried and true medium-like storytelling. He tells compelling stories, and through those stories we get to know him. We join him in those stories. We actually live those stories out with him as he tells those stories. It's like we're walking together through time into the stories that he tells. And this week he'll be telling some fantastic stories, amazing stories that are a little bit scary, but a lot reaffirming, reassuring. The stories of Noach and his sons, the stories of the ark, the stories of the flood, the stories of the rebuild, the stories of the altar, the stories of the covenant made at the altar, the stories of the promises of the creator of the universe, the stories of the purpose of man after the fall, after the flood, and the stories of the vineyard, and about what we do when we see men make mistakes and are in embarrassing or compromising situations, and how is the best way to handle that and not to handle that, and the consequences of each. And we'll learn the stories of a hunter, of Nimrod, of a man who builds his own kingdom and his own cities, and then others who join him as his minions and form and build towers and cities to reach up into the heavens to know the power of God without serving him. We get to learn these stories, and this will be teaching us one thing, not about laws. It will be teaching us about our Creator and his ways and his plans and his goodness. So we know that human beings get to know anyone, a human being of their own or their family or whatever, by telling stories, by listening to the stories the other person tells, and by joining them in telling stories. We bond through these stories that we tell. So that's what the Holy One's trying to do with us in the Torah. Bond and bind with us, and let us bind with him. We see through stories we grow empathy toward one another, and affection toward one another, and closeness, unity toward one another. We become echad, one flesh, one mind, one spirit, little bit by little bit as stories are told. But we do so without judgment, without criticism, without condemnation. We do that. When you do that with a person who tells you their life stories, you become in relationship, you become a friend. And we're going to talk about the Holy One, the Creator of the universe. Oh, what stories he has to tell. Oh, we talk about going into a building saying, if these walls could talk. We go into the Garden of Gethsemane in Jerusalem. And we say, oh, if these trees, if these roots could talk, if they could tell stories. Well, someone outdates them all. The Holy One, the Creator of the universe. Oh, what stories he has to tell. You see, he is the ultimate and the exquisite storyteller. His stories have fascinating settings, and they're told in delightful mixtures of literal and figurative language. They have very relatable characters, like Noah and his sons. They dazzle us with stunning and suspenseful and meaningful action sequences. The stuff matters that they talk about. And they invite us, his stories invite us to consider layers upon layers of meaning, depending on who we are while we're listening, what state of mind and what state of spirit we're in, and why we're even interested, and what we want from him. But they give layers and layers of meaning, ready to the extent we're ready for them. His stories, the Creator's stories, also contain easy to decipher messages for those who are diligently seeking and searching. We're going to learn about that with Noah a little bit. What was Noah looking for? Noah was not just a man who was living his life trying to do the best he could. Noah was listening. He was searching for something. Matzah in the Hebrew. We'll see that verb come out. Actually, it came out at the very end of last week. And we're going to see that kind of characterize the relationship between Noah and the Holy One. Noah was searching. He was Matzah. He was seeking. He was finding because he was seeking. So the Holy One's stories contain easy to decipher messages if you're just willing to search and seek them out. And oh, aren't we willing, beloved? Aren't we here for that reason? Aren't we listening to this broadcast? Aren't you listening to me because you really want something more than a set of rules and regulations? Not that you rebel against those rules or regulations, but don't you want something? Don't you want an intimate relationship with your Creator? Don't you want to know why you're here? Don't you want to know what you are put on earth to do? And what will maximize your impact upon your home, your family, your circle of friends, your neighborhood, your community, your world, your generation. Don't you want to know that? Well, don't you want that kind of level of interaction with the Creator? And don't you want purpose in your life? And don't you want to be prioritizing the things he wants you to prioritize? And don't you want his directions in your life? You see, the mitzvah is a lamp. The instruction of the Holy One as how to live is a lamp to us. And his Torah is light. And that's what we're here for, to start walking in the light. Well, in Parsha Noach, since we're talking about stories, let's discuss some of the stories. Now, to do this, I try to remind people I'm a grandpa. I'm a grandfather. And so I love it when my children look up at me, and my grandchildren look up at me more than particularly now. My children did it when they were young, but my grandchildren now look up to me, especially when they get quiet at night. They say, Abba, Abi, Bata they call me, tell us what would happen to the world This gives an example. Tell us this story. Tell us a story. Well, this week we're going to talk about three main stories and three main questions that we might ask if we were wide-eyed, innocent children looking up to our Heavenly Father saying, Abba, tell us a story. And we would ask him, tell us what would happen to the world if no one even tried to be good. Abba, you tell us to be good. We like the sound of that, but what if no one even tried to be good? What would happen to the world? Tell us, Abba. Tell us what it would happen if no one tried to be kind. If no one even tried to be gracious or patient. If nobody even tried to be a peacemaker, but just egged all the other problem and the controversies on. What if no one ever tried to be gentle, but just want to be harsh all the time and critical and cynical and sarcastic? What if nobody was faithful to the covenant? What would happen to the world if no one was self-controlled or would self-deny or forbear their own pleasure? What would happen to the world if no one tried to be good? Welcome to the story of Noah. Noah and the flood. Noah and the days of Noah. What would happen to the world if no one even tried to be good or kind or gracious or patient or a peacemaker or gentle or faithful to the covenant or self-controlled or a self-denier? Oh, do you understand? The Holy One wants us to understand. The Creator of the universe, our Father in heaven, wants us to understand the impact on the society and on the environment we live in of unmitigated evil, corruption, and violence. There's a Hebrew phrases behind all those three. They're referenced in this parsha. Ra is usually translated as evil, but it just means people want to do their own thing independent of God. They're selfish, they're self-centered, they're self-obsessed, they're narcissistic. They want their own way, in their own time, for their own agendas. Ra. Shakat, what does that word mean? That we translate it as corruption. It means we're going every which way besides the way laid out for us by the instructions of Torah. Shakat means corrupted in the sense that we're not following the plan. We're not walking according to the bright line of light and life that's given to us. We're trying things out on our own. And then Hamas. Hamas is where it means violence, cruelty, oppression. It means not treating people with any level of respect or kindness, gentleness, or self-control. It means getting all caught up in outrage and anger and selfishness and greed and lust. Well, that's the first question. What would happen if no one even tried to be good? The second question, our grandchildren, or we as childlike innocents, asking our Father in heaven questions that might be reproduced in this week in Parsha Noach are, Abba, tell us what would happen if we knew a life-threatening event was coming. What would be the most important things for us to think about? And what would be the most important things? If the world was going to end, what would we need to think about? What would we need to do? What would we need to try to protect? If the world was threatened with extinction, if bad things were going to come all over the world, what would we need to think about? What would we prioritize? Well, cue grandfather, the Abba, the Father in heaven, with the story of the ark and the redemption and the restoration at the end. What was important to Noah? His family was important to Noah, his wife, his sons, and his daughters-in-law. What was important? The species of animals that he had been given to steward upon the earth while he was here. What was important? Following the will and the instructions of the Holy One. That is where light was. That was where life is. So the third question that might rise in this week's Torah studies in our series of stories is, Abba, we might ask as young children, what should we do or not do if we find someone else in an embarrassing or a compromised condition or situation? Should we make fun of them? Should we mock them? Should we take advantage of the situation for whatever we want to do? Oh, what should we do and not do if we find someone else in an embarrassing or a compromised condition or situation, Abba? Cue the story of Noah's vineyard and Ham and Japhet and Shem. Cue the story of learning how to be joining with the Holy One in covering that which is embarrassing or compromised or naked in that process. And finally, the fourth question we might ask is, if we're gathering around our father, our grandfather, wanting him to tell us a story, to calm us and make us feel at peace and bind us to him and let us be together for a while, would be, Abba, what would happen if we neglected communing with and serving the Holy One? What if we quit talking and praying? What if we quit trying to do what the Holy One wants, and we tried instead to do and be like and fit in with everybody else in the world? What if we followed the groups and the trends and the influencers? What if we followed the political leaders and their movements and got all excited about those things? What if we followed the ideologies and the philosophies of men and science and medicine? What if we got all caught up in that? What if we got caught up in ethnic and gender pride celebrations and offenses? What if we got caught up in doing unity man's way and justice man's way? What if we just did it our way and didn't do it the way of the Holy One? Didn't follow his instructions, which are a lamp, and his Torah, which is a light. Father, what would happen? Abba, what would happen? Cue the stories of Nimrod, his kingdom, his violence, the tower, and Babel, and then the result of all that process. That's our stories this week. The timeless stories of Parsha Noach that we'll be looking for encoded secret wisdom in are the 10th generation descendant of Shet, of Adam's son Shet, finding grace. What does it mean to find grace? It says Noah found grace in the eyes of the Holy One. Grace, chen in Hebrew. What does this mean? Finding means you've been looking for something. Finding means you didn't just stumble upon it. Finding means you have been searching. And what you find is grace. Have you been searching for grace, beloved? Have you been searching for grace for yourself? Have you been searching for grace for your world? Have you been searching for grace for your family? Have you been searching for grace for your community? Have you been searching for grace for the species of mankind and for the creation ecosystem? Have you been searching for grace? Because seek and ye will find, some rabbi once said. So the timeless story will include the idea of Shet, Shet's descendant Noah finding grace. And then the second thing will be the 6,000-year flood plan. When we talk about disasters looming and things that would destroy the earth and fearful things that people like to talk about or don't want to talk about because it's so frightening of things that might happen or should happen based upon where we are at a given time, judgment coming, so to speak. What the story of the 6,000-year flood plan? The next thing is the actual flood narrative. We'll ask, what would happen if our world was threatened? What would happen if our livelihood was cut off? What would happen if everything went away and we just had to make it with our family and everything, whoever we could salvage? What would make it? What would happen? The flood narrative. And then the next part of our story in Parsha Noach is pushing the restart button. After the calamity, after the catastrophe, after the disaster, after the flood, after whatever, after the war, after whatever it was that threatened our world, what would be our way of doing things? And what would be the critical keys to success in pushing restart? What would be the critical keys of survival and thriving in the years to come? So the Holy One's going to introduce us to important things. Covenant. He's going to really introduce and push this idea that covenant changes everything. Covenant is a secret to our success. Covenant is a secret to our being able to thrive and flourish and cause our environment around us and the people around us as well to thrive and flourish. Covenant, brit in Hebrew. Covenant terms, covenant blessings, covenant signs. We're going to dig into a little bit about the covenant in the post-flood narrative. And then the second thing is the parable, the mashal of Noah's vineyard. If we're going to learn how to survive and not be keyed into the world's outrage, offense, cynicism, and sarcasm, if we're going to learn to be different than that and create a different environment, a covenant counterbalance to all that stuff, we're going to learn how to cover each other's embarrassing moments. We're going to be people who cover one another and who respect and honor one another as opposed to mocking and shaming and exposing their nakedness to the world. This is a key factor in making sure that we thrive, the world thrives in the post-flood or post-calamity era. Finally, the last part of the timeless stories of Parsha Noach will be the stories of rising humanism. There's a man going to arise named Nimrod. His name means rebellion, rebellious one. And what he does is rebel against the Holy One and the Holy One's plan. And so we're going to see what happens when a man like that begins to grow in power and grow in influence. And he begins to take oppressive movements and people begin to join in his oppressive movements. And they build cities based upon that, those are his oppressive ways. And they build bricks and they build towers that extend up into heaven. And they try to make a unity movement out of his thirst for power and thirst for violence and bloodthirstiness. We're going to see what happens. This is the timeless stories of Parsha Noah. Ra, Shakat, and Hamas, evil, corruption, and violence or cruelty, without a counterbalance. Oh my goodness. Without a covenantal group of people who will counterbalance the Ra, and counterbalance the Shakat, and counterbalance the Hamas with the things of the kingdom. Oh, how much damage they can do to our world. So there's drastic ecosystem damage done by those folks when we don't counterbalance them and don't do what we're supposed to do, when we just join them or let them do what they're going to do. See, desperate times, some people say desperate times call for desperate measures. But in the kingdom, according to Torah, desperate times call for faithful servants. I'll repeat that for you. Some people will say desperate times call for desperate measures. But the Torah says desperate times call for faithful servants. Let us, before we go any further in this discussion of Parsha Noach and the stories that he tells, let's do our call to worship. Sing our Baraku, the blessing, before reading from the Torah. Baraku et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. So be it. And now would you open our eyes, O Holy One, our God, that we may see the wondrous things in your Torah. For we are just strangers, pilgrims upon this earth. So do not hide your instructions from us. Let us walk in the light. Last week in Parsha Bereshit, we went through so many things I don't have time to recount them or cover them today. We talked about introducing us to our Creator, the Elohim. We talked about the offsetting parallel realms and the parallel strategies that the Holy One has of balance and counterbalance and division between the two that keep them separate so they can have a balance and a counterbalance. The Hamashamayim, the heavens, and Haaretz, the earth, so many different levels on those first 7 days. The 7-day plan of creation, offset, balance. And we learned about the atom, the atom that was just a nephesh in the first time, the discussion of creation, and the atom that became a neshama, a living, breathing, eternal soul in a mortal body after the Holy One breathed his life into him, Genesis 2:7. We learned about this special thing called the Sabbath, where heaven touches earth and aligns with earth, and we're supposed to get in place, in position, in alignment, that we can radiate the things of the heaven into the earth, be the portal of heaven to earth. Sabbath is all about that. We learned about the Garden of Eden. We learned about the narrow pathway of mitzvot. He said, I'm going to give you instructions, and the instructions will be your light, will be the way you can navigate through this world. through these difficulties, these challenges. And we learn what happens when you don't follow the light, but you instead follow a stranger's voice. We learned about the serpent and his voice, and it was a story, a parable, and yet it was real, and yet we understand there's voices we can hear that are not the voice of the Holy One, and they're voices of darkness, not voices of light. We're going to see that manifested multiple times over the course of our studies of Torah. And then we want to learn that there is a man. And last week we learned there was a man named Noah, who would be our hope of redemption. Well, last week we left off with Adam and Hava and their descendants having devolved into two bloodlines, the lineage of Cain and the lineage of Seth, as he's called in English many times. Now, Cain's bloodline, the first, was characterized by Rashakat and Hamas, violence toward fellow man, and unwillingness to respond to any of the Holy One's overtures of peace. That's the Cain's bloodline. It just devolved. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Rashakat and Hamas, unmitigated, unchecked, and therefore it's going to come to a head at some point. This can't go on forever. Going to find out what happens in this week's parsha. On the other hand, we talk about Cain's bloodline. Seth's bloodline is still dealing with the same issues that Cain's bloodline is dealing with, but Seth's bloodline has a different line running through it. It's characterized by a few people who call upon the name of the Holy One, and some people who even walk with the Holy One, and men who walk with the Holy One for long life and honor father and mother and walk with the Eternal One and are a hope for mankind. Men like Hanok, men like Methuselah as he called in the Western world, and men like Noah. So, like Seth's line contains hope for mankind. Unfortunately, Cain's line does not. In the 10th generation, then, of these two bloodlines, the 10th generation from Adam, Noah was born. With Noah's birth, the stage was set for the next generation of divine visitation and revelation. The revelation of the next phase of the divine plan of redemption, the introduction to earth of covenant and family-based covenantal lifestyle. What is going to be the answer to the Ra, Shakat, and Hamas? He's going to follow the creation protocol. He's going to offset it with something that will counterbalance it, that will cause it to not have the detrimental effect that Cain's bloodline is having. He's going to introduce to the earth the covenant and family-focused covenantal lifestyle. Covenant is what it's all about. So, the first words of the parsha are Ele Toldot Noah. This is the epic, transgenerationally impactful story of Noah. I know your English Bible is probably translated as these are the generations, or this is the genealogy, or something like that. It's more than that. It's Toldot is more than that. Toldot is an epic, transgenerationally impactful story, and this is that story. You see, it's story time again. But let's talk about the setting. The Holy One is this immaculate storyteller, but he has this great settings. He tells fantastic, fascinating, exquisite settings. And so, what's the setting? Oh, it's a little scary. If we're sitting around with our grandfather, Avi or Zeta, listening to his stories, we're a little. This is like a horror story almost, because the dangerously depraved state of mankind and creation, as this story begins, is downright frightening. The Holy One, it says, saw the wickedness, the ra'at, the ra of man. He saw that the wickedness of man was great, had spread, had multiplied, and had gone throughout the earth. Oh, the Holy One saw this, and then imagine your storyteller, your grandfather telling you the story. Saw everything was wickedness. The wickedness had grown throughout the earth, and every imagination, every inclination, every yetzer in Hebrew of the thoughts of the heart of man was only ra, selfish, narcissistic, wanting its own way, wanting its own power and agenda all the days. Wow, what a depraved state. What a fearful. Is this a horror story, or is this a redemption story? Is this a hate story, or is this a love story? Well, let's introduce the story's main characters. We're told that Noach ish zadik. Noach was a man. In English it says he was righteous, a righteous man. Ish zadik, a righteous man. The Hebrew word doesn't really mean righteous as we think about it. It means that he met specifications that would allow things to be built upon him. That, like in a building project, you have to have a good foundation that's strong and secure and level and plumb so that things can be. Noach was that kind of guy. He was the kind of guy you could build something on. His life, his ways, his approach to life was something you could build upon and make something great happen. And the Holy One's going to do that. What is he going to build? The covenant family-centered relationship with the Holy One and service protocol and model. So Noach Ish Tzaddik, he was a man who met specifications for a building project that the Holy One had in mind. Tamim Haya Bedoratav, he was an example of wholeness, perfection, and relatively at least, in his generation. Ve'et ha'Elohim hithalek Noah. And Noah walked, he moved in step with the Eternal One. Ve'et ha'Elohim hithalek Noah. And he's walking in the light. Noah's our prototype for walking in the light. He's walking with the Holy One, and the Holy One is light, and his words and his instructions are light. It goes on and tells us that Vayalech Noach Shlosha Banim et Shem et Ham ve'et Yafet. And Noah sired or begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Yafet. Shem, Ham, and Japheth, as I think it reads in the English Bibles. Let's go on. The Holy One's now going to set the wallpaper for the story. Let's tell us what the world's like, what the situation he's going to start the story is in. V'tish ha'ket ha'aretz lifnei ha'Elohim. The ha'aretz realm, the world realm, earth realm was corrupted. Shakat. It was ruined. It was wasted. It was headed for destruction before the Holy One. There's just no way it could survive that way. That's what the condition we started with. V'tamale ha'aretz hamas, and the earth was filled with this violence, this hamas, this cruelty, this oppression. It was filled with it. It was overflowing with it. Vayar Elohim et ha'aretz v'hineh nishkata, and the Holy One saw the earth realm as it had evolved, and he saw that it was corrupted and ruined and wasted and headed for destruction. He knew which way this was going. He could see the end from the beginning. Ki hishkit kol basar et dar kol al haaretz, for perversion had taken over, and it was the way of all the flesh upon the earth. Wow. This introduced the storyline, the plot line for the story. And then Elohim said, he stepped out of his cloak of darkness. We haven't. If you've been reading along in the Torah, you realize that throughout chapter 5, the end of chapter 4, chapter 5, the first part of 6, there was no reference to the Holy One. He'd been like watching and letting the world just go its way, letting the law of sowing and reaping have its effect. But now he steps out of the shadows. He steps out of the wings, and the storyteller tells that the Holy One said, he spoke to Noah, this man. Ketz kol basar, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence and cruelty, Hamas, through them. Hineni, behold, I am about to shakat them with the earth, as they have introduced shakat, destruction, corruption to the earth, so I'm going to let them bear the fruit of their own actions, to the extent that I see that they will reap the shakat they have sown. Now note, what's about to happen is the flood. But the flood is not about a punishment for sin. That may shock you, but we're telling the story of the creator of the universe here, and he's not destroying the earth. He's remaking the earth. He's giving the earth a second chance, a restart. He is restoring and he's saving the world, not destroying the world. Now, so what's happening is not primarily about sin. It's primarily about the survival of the ecosystem the Holy One has designed and the continuation of his grand plan for redemption and restoration of all creation and all mankind. That's just what this story is about. Don't think it's about punishment. Don't think he's a cruel God out there trying to punish sin. He's letting things go the way they are up to a point, and then he will intervene. So let's introduce the good news part of the story. Here's the good news part of the story. The Creator is speaking to Noah. As the storyteller is telling us, the Creator speaks to Noah and he goes for it. He says, make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch, with kafar, a covering. Oh, this idea of covering is going to run throughout the Torah. Cover it inside and outside with pitch. If you will let this carry you into the day of Yom Kippurim, the day of the coverings, if you'll let everything having to do with what we think of in English as atonement, you understand, here we are, right here, the Holy One is telling Noah, his own chosen vessel, to start a covenant nation. You make for yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside. Kafar it with gopher. And I will establish my breed with you. Oh, here we get this good news. The good news is the breed is coming. I will establish my breed with you, and you will go upon and within the ark. You will not die. You will not have to die. The covenant means you have a chance of life. You, your sons, and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. The things that were most important to Noah. And of every living thing, of all flesh, you are to bring 2 of every sort into the ark, and you are to keep them alive with you, and they are to be a male with its female, or with a female. And then, Noah, take for yourself some of all the ma'akal, the food, the edibles that may be eaten, and gather them to yourselves. Now, of all the edibles that can be eaten at that stage, remember what the instruction was? Of everything that grows of the earth you may eat, but not to kill animals. So only the grain and the things that we could eat, the fruits and the vegetables, the things, those are all things to take to eat. And gather to yourself, and it will be food, it will be akal also for you and for them, meaning the animals, the species of animals that come 2 by 2. And in some situations, 7 or 14 by 14. That's the animals that he's going to describe as clean, as tahor, that are not, this is another secret that's being released, that some animals have been corrupted by, some species of animals have been corrupted by the Ra, Shakat, and Hamas of mankind, and others are still managing to function. The ones who are clean are managing to function as they were intended. Others are using predators, or carrion eaters, or doing destruction or garbage cleaning method work because they're not being provided for in the way the Holy One designed man to provide for them. Okay, so the Holy One's instructions, the good news. And then it says at the end of chapter 6, thus Noach did. These things Noach did, one by one, every instruction he was given, according to all that the Holy One directed and charged. He walked in the light. He walked in the light of the instructions of the Holy One, which is the light we have to walk in. We can know we're in covenant and still need to walk in the light. Not for eternal salvation purposes, for the fulfillment of our purpose and plan upon the earth. Thus Noach did the things that were instructed by the Holy One, according to all the Holy One directed and charged him to do. So he did. Well, please take note. The secret of Noah's deliverance story does not lie in the specification sheets and the blueprints for the ark. Do you realize? And the storyteller has a wink in his eyes. He's telling us a story because you do realize, don't you, that the Holy One did not need an ark. He didn't need Noah to build an ark to save the species, to prepare the earth for restoration, or to save Noah and his family. He could have taken them out anytime he wanted to, preserve them, and then reintroduce them after the whole thing was over. He didn't need the ark. He didn't need the ark to have certain specifications and blueprints. Noah needed that. And Noah needed to get his children, his sons, and his mother, his wife, their mother, and their spouses involved in the enterprise. They needed to want, the light comes with the instructions. And so the blueprint and the spec sheet for the ark was given for light. So Noah and his sons and their daughters-in-law and his wife could participate in the covenant and be part of the light. And the light would allow them to be over the waters, as it was in Genesis 1:2. So the secret of Noah's deliverance story, the hidden wisdom of Noah's deliverance story is that the ark was not the key to success, except the fact that that was what Noach and his family needed to be able to engage with the Holy One's plan. So the covenant is what matters, and wholehearted acceptance of the covenant's terms, and attempts at least to follow it. All right. So in our day, if the ark is not the secret, what is it we're supposed to build? What is it we're supposed to do? What are our instructions? What are your orders, sir? What are your directions, Grandpa? How do we do this, Father? How do we build this covenant counterbalance in this world? Well, we have to learn. We have to learn the way the world's going, and the secrets underlying the reason the way the world's going. The lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, Ra, Shakat, Hamas. Those words are basically interchangeable. That's just what's motivating the world. And everything the world's doing, the nations are doing, the institutions of mankind are doing, the education systems of man are doing, everything's based upon this serpentine protocol. So we are supposed to counterbalance that with a divine protocol. Instead of doing things for Ra, which is selfishness, we do things unselfishly. We follow the Holy One's ways of service of mankind and of calmness, of staying calm instead of getting offended. We don't get into Chicago. We don't follow the every trend and every idea and every concept and every new doctrine that's put out by men. We follow the instructions of the Torah. This is our life. This is our light. This is our lifeline. So we follow the Torah. That's the counterbalance. And then with regard to the world is full of Hamas, violence, cruelty, oppression. So we have to be the exact opposite. We become the prototype of calmness and gentleness. We become the prototype of mercy and forgiveness. We become the prototype for wisdom as opposed to folly. Okay, you see the idea of what he's trying to do. He's trying to build this covenant people that is an offset. And that's the reason we don't need to have a flood anymore. Why does he say at the end of the story, I'll never again will I destroy the earth with a flood and kill all mankind with a flood? Because he knows he's created the antidote to the Rosh Hashanah Namas when he creates the covenant and the covenant people doing his will, his work. Not forming a religion, not creating a religious system or a set of halakha. No, in an intimate relationship with the creator of the universe, following his divine instructions, talking to him as a man talks to his friend, talking to him as a grandchild talks to his grandpa with respect and honor. So let's go on a little bit further. We have a discussion in this parsha about the vineyard. Noah, after the earth was replenished and the covenant was set in place, and I urge you to read the terms of the covenant. There's now a social bond, a spiritual bond and a social bond between Noah and his descendants that is available to all, but will not be chosen by all. Will not be accepted by all. There is a covenant possibility now in existence that will be the secret to offsetting the Rosh Hashanah and Hamas and cause there to be no need for a world great destruction. Again, we're going to go into that. But in the vineyard, after that, it's all established. Noah plants a vineyard, and this is the first vineyard we've talked about. And so it's kind of like the Garden of Eden, right? It's sort of this is man's vineyard as opposed to God's garden. But so even in the context of planting this vineyard, you see this hunger to return to an Edenic state. And so what Noah does is he drinks of some of the juice of the grapes once they find. And how long did that take? I mean, you don't eat of the vine the first year, it takes a while. So how many years does it take for this vineyard to produce grapes? And then he drank of it and wine, and he drank of it and he became intoxicated. And that's not the main problem that we have here. The main problem is what's going to happen afterwards, because he was uncovered in his tent. He was so inebriated, so under the influence of alcohol, that he became uncovered in his tent. Now the question is, what do we do when someone we love and trust and care for is found in an embarrassing, compromising situation. Well, remember the law of cover. And so what happens is we have two examples. The storyteller tells us about Ham first. Ham, one of the sons of Noah, comes into the tent. Why was he there? What was he doing? Don't know. He comes into the tent and he sees his father, Noah, uncovered, compromised in an embarrassing situation. So what does Ham do? What would you do? Well, Ham, unfortunately, decided it would be fun to go out and mock, and let's assume we get through some of the midrash stories. We just overlook those for right now, because all we need to worry about is the one. It's not the details of what happened, what Ham actually did to Noah in the tent. It's what he did when he left the tent. He went out and he mocked and he made fun of Noah. He told everybody about his father's embarrassing situation. He got on social media of the day and made his point about how and cynicism and sarcasm about Noah, saying bad things about him. Maybe they were true, maybe they weren't. This is the first episode of the Lashon Hara that we're really seeing, at least after the flood. And so what does Shem and Yafet do? The brothers come in and they understand what is just said. They turn their backs and they do this covering protocol, the law of the cover. They implement the law of the cover. And so rather than publish and talk about to their wives or to their mother about the silly things, the drunkenness and the embarrassment and the nakedness of their father, and make fun of that, they begin to cover it and begin to let Noah restore himself under the. That's the thing about the covering protocol. It's not just about covering things up. It's about letting them heal. The coverings of the Holy One, the coverings of the ways of the covenant, are coverings that allow healing to take place. It's like if you have a cut or a sore or a burn, and you wrap that cut or sore or burn with a bandage, but in the bandage you put healing balm and medicine. You see what happens. The covering is not just hiding the wound or the scar or the burn. It's healing it. Well, that's the idea of the covenant. Finally, the last part of the parsha is about what happens when men follow other men. What happens when men follow charismatic leaders, political, ideological, scientific, religious, follow these leaders with an almost minion-like approach. And that's what happened with Nimrod. Nimrod built cities. He oppressed. He hunted. He was a violent person, and he took what he wanted by violence. He was a taker, and others let them take him, and he actually took their hearts and their souls, and they began to build cities unto him, honoring Nimrod. And so it was with Babel. And at Babel, men began to say, "Let's do this. Let's do it our way. Let's do things our way. Let's build a tower and a city and a tower that extends into heavens, and let's make a name for ourselves." Oh, do you see the independence, the Declaration of Independence from the Creator of the universe? First of all, the whole idea was wrong, because the Holy One had said to go forth and spread out and expand yourself throughout the entire world, and they wanted to stay together in cities and build towers unto themselves and associate with each other. So what happens whenever everyone around you is going the wrong way? Is there a secret? Well, the Holy One says, I'm not going to allow that to take place. I'll give it this much room, but I will end it. So we have the story of the tower. And what happened was that the Holy One stopped it by confusing the language where they couldn't even communicate with one another. And now we see that's a pretty effective means of dealing with the situation. If people are trying to congregate and make their own way and call it unity against the Holy One, then he's going to cause disunity among them to now enable individuals to be able to hear the ways of the Holy One, the plan, the light, and follow it. Well, I hope you are ready to dig into stories of covenant, because, boy, that's what's coming next in our great storyteller journal. As we go to next week and we talk about the stories, tell us a story, Abba, we're going to hear about another set of characters, Abraham and Sarai. Oh, we're going to hear some stories about Sodom and Gomorrah. We're going to hear stories about Lot and his daughter. We're going to hear some stories in the days to come, all building up on this idea that covenant. What is covenant? Covenant is favor or grace with accompanying responsibility, not just to do what you wish with it. Covenant favor and grace. Covenant grace is favor and grace with responsibility. It's privileges based upon relationship and intimacy with accountability. And it's care and nurture and provision and protection of one another and the world, and receiving that from the Holy One and giving it to others because we've been inspired to love. We've been inspired to loyalty to the Creator. We've been inspired to honor Him and each other. We've been inspired to serve one another. My time with you is about over. But we've enjoyed our time of storytelling and our another way of looking at the Torah as the great stories of our grandfather, of our Avinu, telling us these stories to teach us secret wisdoms that are encoded within the timeless stories of the Torah. See you next week for Parsha Lech Lecha. Shabbat Shalom.